Have you ever promoted a cook and been disappointed by their performance and the shortcomings that you then see once they're in their new role? By the end of this video, you're going to learn the first of 2 steps I use to identify the most promotable traits in my staff, so that you can identify future leaders and develop all of the potential hiding in your culinary team. I implemented this exact process with Chef Derek to find hidden talent in his team and better utilize the staff that he had so he could improve his culinary program, all within the confines of his existing labor budget. If you're looking to identify hidden talent and make the most of the candidates that you have available to you, then I can help. This is what I do every day with my clients in kitchens, in hotels, in clubs, and in restaurants all over. I'd love to speak with you directly so that we can navigate and work through those problems together. Book a call below so I can support you. This is the first of 2 parts. And in this one, we're going to focus on competence. In part 2, we focus on potential. So let's get started and let's take that first step in this video. When I'm talking about competence in cooks and for promotability, I really want to focus on 6 key areas with little micro behaviors that I'm evaluating. For sake of discussion, I'm going to lump these into what I consider buckets, and these buckets are just to collect ideas, right? So we're going to focus on 6 particular buckets of competencies. These are also the same buckets that I'm looking at when it comes to me writing a job description or evaluating for a new hire. And when it comes to competencies, I'm looking for time competence, food-related competence, organization competence, cleanliness, financial responsibility, and communication. And so let's pick through those, and I'm going to give you a couple little things that I look for that help me decide and determine competence before I'm looking at somebody as far as their potential. Because when there's root issues in the foundational competencies of the team, inevitably mishaps, misoccurrences, and variables are completely out of control. So the first one that I'd like to start to talk about, and I think it's really at the core of everything, is time. They're time competencies. There's a lot of things that happen in the day-to-day that allow us to see whether people are time competent or completely oblivious to it. And I think it's super important because our day is technically ruled by time. Service happens at the same time most every day. And if you're not doing a la carte every single day, inevitably there's a start time for an event. There's usually an end time for an event, right? Time roots us in the operation. And so to me, I consider that an anchor for the day. Right? I look at those anchors and I try and use those as the posts to drive the behaviors and the interactions and the decisions that go on through the day. So what time competency looks like to me is showing up on time. Not half an hour early like was required of me when I was a young cook, but at least a few minutes so that by the time they clock in, they're in the kitchen on time. Recognizing those deadlines, right? If service starts at a particular time and you've established that that's a deadline, people meet that deadline. If you have a pre-shift and your pre-shift happens at the same time every single day, I require my cooks actually to set an alarm in their phones to make sure that if they have a pre-shift item or if they're going to pre-shift, that they have an alarm going off as a reminder to make sure that they're there and that they're on time. Same thing with timing during dinner service. If I'm loose with time, then my cooks are going to be casual with everything else as well. It's a clear standard and it's a meetable, time-bound expectation. 12 o'clock is 12 o'clock. And somebody showed up on time or they didn't. And once gray area starts to seep its way into there, then inevitably you're going to run into some other issues. At least I always have. And so therefore, I'm always looking for these particular occurrences so that I can make sure that there is time competence. Because once that happens, then I can build everything on top of that. I've often heard along my career that chefs want great attitudes. And I think it's common, like why would you not want a great attitude? But I want attitudes and I want behaviors. Some of these behaviors can be taught. The best way to go about it is to set a standard, as far as a time standard, and let people know what that is. Give them that clear expectation and allow them to meet that. And then coach them and guide them to make sure that they're meeting that. If you're looking to identify hidden talent and make the most of the candidates that you have available to you, then I can help. Book a call below so I can support you. The next competency that I'm looking to identify are food-based. We're in the food industry. Craft and fundamentals are at the core of everything that I do. There are foundational behaviors that yield positive results, right? In cooking, it comes down to execution of good fundamental technique, tasting, execution, consistency, and food temperature. And so those are the things that I'm looking for as I'm looking to evaluate somebody from a food competency standpoint. The first one, are they tasting their food? Do they know what great food tastes like? It's super important to help young cooks develop their palate. I think that's probably one of my biggest responsibilities with young cooks is to help them understand, in my opinion, what things are supposed to taste like. I consider myself a bit of a purist. So if I'm going to be cooking a pad thai, I want to be as close to the pad thai that I ate in Thailand as humanly possible. Just as if I'm going to have a mole. If I'm going to make a mole, then I want to make sure that it's like one of the moles that I consumed while I was traveling and deliver that. For me, it's about that understanding, and I want to make sure that people are taking that understanding as well as they're developing their palate and tasting. Now that's new cooks. As cooks go on and graduate through the phases with me, I have different levels of expectation for taste. I want them to know how to taste. I want them to encourage other people to taste. It looks differently. Like I said, for younger cooks, it's a willingness. It's a willingness to taste. It's a willingness to understand and have a discussion. For cooks who are more seasoned, I want them to be able to taste and have a discussion about that and encourage others to taste and know that it's my expectation that things are getting tasted. From my experience, data has shown me that 80% of my problems in the kitchen go away when food is tasted. The soup can be caught if it's burnt, right? The soup can be tasted and you can tell if it's cold. The sauce, you can check and see if it needs a little bit of acidity or a little bit of seasoning based on taste, right? Tasting eliminates so many problems that I want to make sure that there's that competency there. Then as we develop into more competency with food, we're looking at temperature, making sure that cold food is cold and hot food is hot. I also want to make sure that people are following my ratios, my processes, and my recipes. That's very important to me. I want my operational line level team to be executing consistently the standards that exist. If there's a recipe for something, I, one, try to make sure that my recipes have very little wiggle room for personal interpretation, and I expect that personal interpretation isn't a part of the recipe. They're going to execute to the recipe. That's the baseline. That's what's going to get me consistency. I remember when I first came into a particular operation and we had ranch dressing, Hidden Valley. To me, Hidden Valley makes the standard for ranch dressing. And one day it was super thick, one day it was super thin, and every once in a while it was right. So I was paying attention to what was going on, and I started asking my prep cooks, why? The answer was simple. Well, one person, when they made it, they thought the recipe needed more liquid, so they made it thinner. Another person thought that they made it too thin and they wanted it thicker, and then another person just followed the recipe. To me, something like that should have zero room for conversation, right? The process should be followed. The recipe should be written. The packet of Hidden Valley has a tremendous amount of time, effort, energy, and money invested in it to yield a consistent result. Follow the recipe. So then that led me to see where some people were open to following direction and others weren't. Big mark of competency if people are willing to follow an instruction or not. This helps me identify if people are trainable. Next, organization. Are people setting up their station in an organized fashion? Do people take care of their knives and put them away properly? Are people putting things back away where they came from? Exactly where they came from. There's a competency there that means that people are trainable, right? If they're willing to take this and do the right thing with it, whether somebody's looking or not, then that's going to lead to other promising possibilities. I think it's really important to be able to pay attention to that and see where people go with it. And as I'm paying attention to the way that people prep or people mise en place, I'm also looking to see how they're organizing themselves. And I'm also looking for those opportunities to teach how to work more efficiently and work more effectively. I expect that of my sous chefs. I expect that of my executive sous chefs. I expect that of my senior leadership team to be able to help the younger cooks develop flow and understand organizational habits. These aptitudes are developed over time, but on the most basic level, I want to know if somebody's going to put something away exactly where they got it from. Are they going to wrap it before they put it into the cooler? Are they going to label it? This is the benefit of having standards, right? When these standards are well established and they're cultural, then people are encouraged to do these things. To me, if these behaviors aren't executed, I can't build them beyond where they are. That's just the way that my brain thinks about it. If somebody's not tasting food and not wrapping up mise en place and putting it away, until they get those things right, I'm not even going to consider them for any next steps. Next level of competence, cleanliness. Cleanliness before, during, and after the shift. Are they using the checklists? And if you don't have checklists, are they wiping down their station before they come in? Do they understand the difference between cleanliness and sanitization? I'm a big proponent of everybody getting certified, whether it be ServSafe certification or any of the other certifications that are out there, as far as being health code conscious, right? Because when everybody's educated in those things, then inevitably you're going to run into a situation where more people understand what's right and what's wrong and don't do what's wrong. People wash their hands, people clean up, people organize, people label, people understand the standards. The more people understand the standards, the more people that are likely to execute the standards. I'm also looking for people's emergency response. And emergency response, I'm not talking about like actual emergencies, but I'm talking about those events that occur, like somebody dropped something on the floor, how's it handled? If there's dirt on the floor, how is it handled? Are people stopping and cleaning? Are they sweeping? Are they mopping? Are they trying to do it? Are they dumping it on somebody else? Or are they, in a crunch moment where they drop a mop sign, they inform the people that they need to, and then they go back to doing what they're doing? Like, emergencies happen. How do people handle it? When it comes to financial responsibility, that looks a bit different at each level. At the basic level, though, I want to know that people understand that things cost money, that my pots cost what they cost, that knives cost what they cost, and have a general sense of care. I also want to make sure that food isn't getting wasted for no particular reason. I want to make sure that nothing's going into the bin that doesn't belong in the bin. Is there trim that could be used for stock or for a puree? Obviously, this training falls back on me to make sure that I'm doing this and to make sure that I'm checking on it, but I want to know if somebody has concern and fiscal responsibility for the resources that they're being provided. That's somebody who's going to make a good sous chef. And until my cook has that, I don't think I can trust them with additional responsibilities, right? Because as you climb the ladder, inevitably, you have more things that you manage. And then finally, communication, right? When it comes to communication, on the most basic level, has to take place. Are people generally aggravated? Are people friendly? Are people willing to communicate? Are people trying to communicate? I'm thinking in its simplest fashion of, if I need something, am I communicating that? Or if my cook is running low on something, are they communicating with a reasonable amount of time? And look, there's always that cook that says, "Chef, I just ran out of ... and you're in the middle of service. That's a great coachable moment because you can say, that sucks, and I need you to let me know further in advance. Those moments have also forced me to realize, though, that I need to be checking in and communicating earlier and saying, for example, we're going to be doing 180 covers tonight, and this dish represents 15% of main course sales. You're going to need at least 27 portions. Let's make it 35 to be safe. Let me know if you don't have that many. I don't want to chase people around all the time. I need them to come to me with information, but I need to set a parameter and a frame and avoid saying things like, enough. Do you have enough fish for tonight? That's an easy question to say yes to when you don't even know. How much is enough? And if I'm not giving people the idea of what's enough, then how can I expect them to have a clear idea of what enough is? So if I can put that out there, then I can also allow people to communicate with me based on better information, having better data, and allowing me to manage far more practically. What is a clear sign to you that someone is ready to move up? Share below in the comments. Identifying and developing talent within a culinary team is crucial for the success of any operation. By focusing on foundational competencies that you establish and providing opportunities for team members to showcase and hone their skills, you can cultivate a more capable and dynamic team with what you have available to you. If you're looking to identify hidden talent and make the most of the candidates that are available to you, then I can help. This is what I do every day with my client. I'd love to speak with you directly so that we can navigate and work through those problems together. Book a call below so that I can support you. There's a lot of time that can be spent in wishing that the industry was different and wishing that staff was available and wishing that we had access to more advanced candidates. That's not the way that the industry is currently working. Early identification of those that are looking to advance in their culinary careers and looking to master these competencies are going to seize development opportunities that you present to them. Early identification comes from just a few specific focused tasks and paying attention to the signs that exist. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to talking to you again in part 2.